Have you ever looked into the eyes of an elderly loved one and felt there was something they weren't saying, something hiding behind their smile, a silence that wasn't empty, but full? Pause. Soft breath of quiet. They've lived through wars, raised generations, survived grief, change, and time itself. And yet in their final chapters, they often keep their deepest truths tucked away, not because they don't feel them, but because they don't want to trouble us with them. In this quiet series, we'll listen, not to what they say out loud, but to what their hearts have been whispering all along. These are 7 secrets the elderly don't dare tell you, and once you've heard them, you may never see your parents and your grandparents or your future self the same way again. Your support keeps us going. Subscribe and be part of the Wisdom family. I say I'm fine, but I'm not. I'm fine. It's a phrase said so easily, so automatically. But inside, a storm may be quietly rising. Because sometimes when the elderly say they're fine, what they really mean is, I don't want to bother you. I know you're busy. I'm trying to stay strong, even though I'm tired of pretending. Loneliness wears many masks. It doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it looks like a polite smile. Sometimes it sounds like, don't worry about me, or I just stayed in today. But behind those words is often the quiet ache of someone waiting for a voice, a visit, a warm hand, a moment that reminds them, you still matter, you are still seen. They don't want pity, they want presence. Elders often choose silence, not because they have nothing to say, but because they don't want to burden anyone. They don't want to be the heavy one. They don't want to feel like a problem in your already full life. So instead, they hide their pain behind small talk. They wear strength like a coat, even when it no longer fits. But if you listen closely, if you watch gently, you'll notice the pauses between their words, the sigh before I'm okay, the subtle wish in their eyes that says, please stay just a little longer. Aging is not just physical, it's emotional. They lose more than just mobility. They lose familiar voices. They lose shared routines. They lose the small roles they used to fill, the one who cooked, who planned, who provided. Now they sit and watch. They wait to be invited into conversations, into decisions, into life itself. And when no one calls, no one asks, no one needs them, it chips away at something silent but sacred inside. Closing reflection for part 1. The next time someone elderly says, I'm fine, pause. Look them in the eyes. Ask again, gently. Stay a few minutes longer than you planned. Let the silence breathe. Let them speak if they wish, or just sit beside them in that quiet, because even silent presence can speak volumes. Sometimes healing begins not with medicine, but with being truly seen. I'm afraid of becoming a burden to my children. They smile when you bring them soup. They say, I'm fine when they're clearly not. They refuse help not because they don't need it, but because they're terrified of needing you too much. A fear that lives quietly inside their bones. They won't tell you this outright, but every time you sigh when they call your name, they notice. Every time you rush out the door looking at your watch, they feel it. Every time they have to ask twice for something, it stings. They carry a silent fear, older than their wrinkles and deeper than any ache in their body. The fear that one day they'll become too much for you to carry. That's why they hide their pain behind a smile. Your mother tells you her knees are just a little stiff, even though she struggles to climb the stairs. Your father says he's got it under control, even though he almost fell trying to change the light bulb. They downplay everything. They cover up the truth, because deep down they believe that needing help means becoming a burden, and they would rather suffer silently than feel like a weight on your shoulders. They used to be your shelter. Now they're afraid to take up space. They remember the days when they could lift you with one arm, when their backs were straight and their minds sharp, when they were the ones solving problems, fixing things, holding the family together. Now, they ask for help opening a jar. They forget things, they walk slower, and each small decline chips away at their sense of dignity. They hate that they have to lean on you now, not because you're unwilling, but because they remember when they didn't have to. It's not pride, it's love, dressed in silence. They don't want to burden you because they know how hard life already is. They see you juggling work, kids, bills, deadlines, so they decide to not be one more thing on your list. This kind of love, the kind that holds its own pain so yours can be lighter, is sacred, but it's also dangerous because unspoken burdens are still heavy. And silence doesn't make fear go away. What they need most is reassurance, not solutions. You don't need to fix everything. Sometimes all it takes is a few words. You're never a burden. I want to help. I'm glad I can be here for you now, like you were for me. Say it out loud. Say it often, not because they'll ask for it, but because they need to hear it. Closing reflection for part 2. Aging is not just losing strength, it's losing roles, from caregiver to care receiver, from leader to listener. And that shift is painful, unless softened by love. So remind them, their worth is not in what they can do, but in who they are. To you, I don't have much time left. They won't say it out loud, but they feel it in their breath, in their bones, in the way mornings feel heavier now. Every sunrise is both a gift and a gentle reminder. There are fewer ahead than behind. Time becomes something they can feel in their body. They don't need a calendar to tell them they're getting older. They feel it in the stiffness of their joints each morning, in how long it takes for their thoughts to find the right words, in how quickly the seasons seem to pass now. When you're young, years feel like mountains, vast, solid, endless. But when you're old, time becomes mist. It slips through your fingers even as you try to hold it. They know even if they don't say it. There's not much time left to do, to say, to be. That's why their gaze lingers a little longer. On your face. On the laughter of their grandchildren. On the sunlight streaming through the window. They're memorizing. Not because they're forgetful, but because they know one day they won't be able to see it anymore. They take mental photographs, each one soaked in quiet gratitude and a whisper of goodbye. They may still plan for tomorrow, but they cherish today with a sacred kind of urgency. They don't want to scare you with the truth. They don't talk about death because they're afraid you're not ready. They don't want you to panic or cry or change the subject. They want to protect you from the heaviness that weighs on their own heart. So they talk about the weather, or ask if you've eaten. They laugh at old stories and hum old songs. And somewhere beneath all that is a quiet wish. I hope I've done enough. I hope you'll be okay when I'm gone. They aren't afraid of death itself, just of leaving things unsaid. They want to say, I'm proud of you. They want to ask, do you remember that day? They want to tell you where they keep the old letters, the family recipes, the stories no one else knows. But sometimes they don't know how, so they wait. For a quiet moment, for your full attention, for the courage. By then, sometimes it's too late. What they need is not to be saved, but to be seen. Look into their eyes longer. Ask them about their life, not just their health. Let them tell the same story again, even if you've heard it before. Because every time they tell it, they're leaving you a piece of themselves. And when they say things like, I'm getting old, or I won't be around forever, don't brush it off. Hold that moment. Let it be tender, real. Because what they're really saying is, I love you, I just don't know how many more chances I'll get to show it. Closing reflection. For part 3, we always think we'll have more time. One more visit, one more call, one more meal together. But someday we'll look back and realize the last time already happened and we didn't know it. So while they're still here, listen slowly, hug longer, say the words you'd regret withholding. Because they know what we try to forget. Time is not promised, love is. For I need to be heard more than I need to be helped. You brought me soup, thank you. You helped me with my medicine, I appreciate it. But what I long for most is someone who really wants to listen. The ears of a loved one can sometimes heal more than medicine. Sometimes the help is too quick, and the listening too brief. You ask, how are you feeling today? They say, a little tired. You respond, then go lie down. End of conversation. You didn't mean to rush them, you were trying to help. But sometimes what they truly wanted wasn't advice, wasn't a solution. It was simply for someone to pause, to sit, and to really be there. They have so much to say, but they've learned to keep quiet. They carry decades of memories, some sweet like ripe fruit, others heavy like stones. Stories about love lost and found, sacrifices made in silence, dreams they had to let go of, and lessons they wish they'd learned sooner. But modern life is loud, fast, crowded, so they've learned to stay quiet, to tell their stories to the wind while watering plants, to whisper their regrets into the folds of an old sweater, because no one asked. And even when someone did, no one stayed long enough to listen. Being heard is a form of dignity. When someone listens, truly listens, it says, "You matter. Your words are worth my time. Your life means something." For the elderly, that's not a small thing. It's a way of remembering that they are not invisible, that even if their bodies have slowed, their hearts still hold wisdom, that even if their hands are wrinkled, their stories still shimmer. They don't want to fade quietly into the background. They want to leave traces, to be remembered, not just managed. Every time they speak, it's a window into a vanishing world. That old story they always tell, it's not just repetition, it's legacy. The way they talk about how bread used to taste, the games they played before the internet, the lessons their own parents passed down. These aren't just tales, they're time capsules. And when no one listens, a piece of history quietly disappears. You don't need to say just be fully present. Put down your phone, pull up a chair, look into their eyes, ask them, what was your childhood like? Who taught you how to be strong? What do you miss the most about the past? What do you wish someone had told you when you were younger? Then sit and stay. Your presence, your attention, your quiet nods, these are love in its purest form. Closing reflection for Part Khan, the elderly don't always need someone to carry their bags, or drive them to appointments or cook their meals, though all of that helps. What they need just as much, if not more, is someone who will listen without interrupting, stay without rushing, and say, with silence and stillness, "You're not alone. I hear you." Because in the end, being truly heard is the beginning of healing. There are still things I regret, but I'm afraid to bring them up. The past never really leaves us. Some memories glow like candlelight, others haunt like old shadows under the bed. And as people age, they often carry the heaviest memories in silence, not because they've forgotten, but because they're afraid you haven't forgiven. They still think about what they did wrong, even if it was decades ago. They remember the time they raised their voice, the night they left without saying goodbye, the birthday they forgot, the words they shouldn't have said, the ones they never did. Time moves forward, but regret doesn't always follow. It stays lodged in the heart like a pebble in the shoe, small but felt with every step. And as they grow older, the weight of those regrets becomes harder to bear. Not because the mistakes were so great, but because the time to make things right feels so small. They want to apologize, but they're afraid to reopen old wounds. What if you say it's too late? What if you don't even remember and they're the only one still hurting? Or worse, what if you do remember and it still hurts? So instead of speaking, they stay silent, they smile, they serve. They try to make up for it in the little ways: a bowl of soup, a story, a quiet presence at the dinner table. But inside there's a small voice that whispers, "I wish I could take it back. I wish I had loved you better then." They fear judgment more than they fear death. They know their time is growing short, but what keeps them awake some nights isn't the thought of leaving. It's the thought of leaving without being understood. They don't expect perfection from themselves anymore. They just want to know that the ones they love see the whole picture. The mistakes, yes, but also the efforts, the anger, yes, but also the love beneath it, the silence, hugs, and the reasons for it. They don't want to be remembered only for their flaws. They want to be forgiven for being human. You don't have to fix the past. You just have to open the door. Sometimes all it takes is an invitation. Is there anything you've always wanted to say? Was there ever a moment you wish had gone differently between us? Is there something you need to let go of? These aren't easy questions, but they open a space where old pain can soften, where regrets can breathe and maybe even dissolve. And if they do choose to open up, listen with your whole heart. Let them speak without correction. Let them cry if they need to. And if you can, say what they've longed to hear. It's okay, I forgive you, I love you. Because even the smallest grace can bring great peace. They may never be able to change what happened, but knowing that you see their regret, knowing that you know they tried, knowing that they are still loved, that alone can lift a burden they've carried for years. It's not about erasing the past, it's about letting them go home lighter. Closing reflection. For part 5, the elderly often carry quiet sorrows, not because they want to, but because they believe they must. Regret can be an invisible cage, and the key is often found in the softest things. A question asked gently, a hug held longer, a tear met with silence and safety. If you ever feel a pause in their voice, a flicker, in their eyes that might be regret, asking for a way out, give it one. I still want to feel needed, not just cared for. It's comforting to be looked after, but even more sacred is to be looked to. As people age, they don't stop wanting to contribute. They don't stop needing to matter, and being needed, even in small ways, can light a fire no medicine can. Being cared for is passive. Being needed is powerful. Yes, they appreciate the meals you prepare. Yes, they are thankful for the rides, the reminders, the gentle checking in. But somewhere inside, there is a quiet ache. I used to be the one who helped, the one others leaned on. I used to give. Now, I only receive. And that shift, subtle at first, can begin to feel like erasure, as if age has turned them invisible, as if the world has decided they have nothing left to offer. But they do, not in the same ways, not always with strength or speed, but with depth, memory and heart. Purpose is a flame, and even old hands can carry it. They still want to be the one you come to for advice. They still want to help you cook, even if they can only stir the soup. They still want to tell stories that teach or share memories that guide. They still want to knit, to write, to plant, to pray, to encourage. They still want to be asked, "Can you help me with this? What would you do in my place? What do you think?" Because every time they are asked, they feel seen. Every time they are needed, they feel alive. Even small roles restore dignity. Let them fold the napkins. Let them sweep the front step, even if you have to redo it later. Let them babysit for an hour, share a recipe, tend a plant, bless a meal. Not because you can't do it yourself, but because they need to do it for you. It's not about efficiency. It's about meaning. It's about giving them a place in the rhythm of your life. And when they are no longer able to do much with their hands, let them give with their presence, their wisdom, their blessing. Let them know they still make a difference. What they fear is not aging, it's irrelevance. They can accept that their body will slow. They can accept the aches, the medications, even the losses. But what crushes the spirit is when no one asks for their input anymore, when their opinion is skipped over, when their days feel like waiting rooms instead of journeys. They don't want to just exist. They want to belong. To matter, to be a thread in the fabric, not just a patch on the edge. They still carry lessons the world needs. They've seen what comes after the storm. They know what patience can do. They've learned when to let go and when to hold on. They've witnessed love in all its complicated forms. But none of that can be shared if no one invites them in, if no one stops to ask, if no one opens space for their presence to be more than symbolic. Closing reflection for part 6. The greatest poverty of old age is not illness, but isolation. And the richest gift you can offer is responsibility, however small. Let them teach. Let them bless. Let them contribute. Let them feel once more that their life touches yours in ways that matter. Because no matter their age, no matter how much help they may need, they still want to be helpful. And in that giving, they feel whole. 7. I'm more afraid of being forgotten than of dying. Death, they say, is natural. We all must go. But to be forgotten, that is a second death, one that happens slowly, in the silence after you're gone. They know time is limited, but they hope their love isn't. As the years pass, they feel the hours stretch differently. They think about who they were, what they did, and whether it mattered. They hold on to old photos, worn-out recipes, handwritten notes, not just for memory's sake, but as proof that they lived, that they loved, that they gave something real. They may not say it aloud, but deep down they wonder, Will they remember how I used to sing in the kitchen? Will they pass down that story I always told at dinner? Will my name still be said when I'm not here to speak it? The fear isn't death. It's vanishing, not having their face in family albums, not hearing their name mentioned at holiday tables, not being asked about, missed, or even recalled. To die is one thing, but to disappear from memory, that's what truly hurts. Because if no one remembers them, did they really matter? What they hope for is legacy, not in statues, but in hearts. They want to live on in the way you stir the soup, in the lullabies you sing to your children, in the way you hold your tongue instead of lashing out, because they once taught you patience. They want to know that something of them, a laugh, a lesson, a kindness, will ripple into the lives you touch. Even if no one knows where it came from, that is how they dream of living on. Even the smallest remembrance is a thread that connects time, lighting a candle on their birthday, telling your child, your great-grandfather used to say, using their favorite bowl, playing their favorite song, keeping their handwriting in a drawer, saying their name aloud. These tiny acts carry immense weight. They say you are not gone, you are still with us. You still matter, and for those nearing the end of life, that matters more than anything else. You don't need to promise immortality, just remembrance. You don't need to make grand speeches or build shrines, just notice them now. Honor them while they are still here. Ask them to tell their story again and again, even if you already know it by heart. Because one day you'll wish you could hear it one more time. Your support keeps us going. Subscribe and be part of the Wisdom family. The silent room we all must enter. Someday, one by one, the truths unfolded, not in anger, not in despair, but in the soft, steady voice of those who have lived long enough to understand what really matters. They didn't shout, they didn't demand. Instead, they waited, like old trees holding stories in their rings, waiting for someone to lean close enough to listen. And if you did, if you stayed through all 10 of these quiet truths, then something in you has already shifted. You now know that I'm fine can hide oceans of loneliness. That what they need most isn't help, it's presence. That aging is not just physical, but emotional, spiritual, and invisible. That behind each wrinkle is a story. That every regret still echoes in the night. That being cared for is not the same as being needed. That death is less feared than disappearing from memory. That relevance, respect, and routine are more powerful than we ever realized. That old hearts still burn with dreams, still ache with memories, and that they are not just approaching the end, they are preparing to hand something over. Not money, not property, but something far more sacred. A way of seeing, a way of being, a way of loving that survives time. And now, it's your turn. Their hands are slowly letting go. Not out of defeat, but with faith. Faith that someone is listening, that someone is watching, that someone will carry the torch forward with tenderness. Maybe that someone is you. Maybe it's your turn to remember their name, to preserve their story, to show your children how to love the elderly, by how you loved them. Because aging is not a tragedy, forgetting them is. Let us not wait until the chairs are empty. Let us not rush past the quiet figures by the window. Let us not treat the elderly as background, but as living libraries, sacred ground, and the gentle reminders of what we too are becoming. This journey of truth is not just theirs, it is ours. And someday, we will pray that someone listens to us with the same softness.